Welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry, a podcast covering the Miami Dolphins and the NFL. Now, here's your hosts, Chris, Alf, and Simon.
And we're on, and welcome to 3 Yards Per Carry. I'm Alfredo Arteaga. Simon Clancy is here. Chris Kaufman is here. And let's just get to it. Pretty eventful day today. They signed Byron Jones, my number one target. I put it on 5reasonsports.com. I had a wish list of 3 guys. It seems like one is in limbo, which is Melvin Gordon. The other one is Andres Pete, which we haven't heard from today. But number one, I had Byron Jones. He is on board. 5 years, $82.5 million, $57 million guaranteed, $40 million in the first 2 years. Simon, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, he's the premier player in free agency in terms of the non-tagged guys, and when you look away from the Tom Brady's and those sorts of things. But certainly the best defensive player on the market, and the Dolphins managed to land him. And all of a sudden, Brian Flores covets defensive backs more than pretty much any coach not called Bill Belichick in the NFL. And all of a sudden, he's got the 2 highest paid corners in the league that will make up 15% of the salary cap. But by God, they're good ones. Xavier Howard, Byron Jones. You talk about. Byron Jones, just an athletic super freak, can play free safety, did so up until 2 years ago. I think in 2018, he was the best corner in the NFL, not called Stephon Gilmore. Still had a really good year last year. Doesn't get a lot of interceptions, but, 2 guys that can just sit on an island. And, I think that's Jones is a great, I think all 3 of us were coveting Jones from a long, long way out. I just went back and looked at our WhatsApp conversations, and all 3 of us were sort of for 6 months have been talking about, wouldn't it be amazing if we could get Byron Jones, and boom, look, we got him. So
yeah,
kudos.
Yeah, Chris, you should be happy. We've been talking about this for a while now.
Yeah, I think when we did our mock off season, I think we had Byron Jones as pretty much the headliner, right? I mean, this is, as Simon says, this is the biggest free agent on the market, and the Dolphins were the biggest players in free agency this year as far as cap space is concerned. So they nailed them. And I think they had to lean on the other teams in order to do it. They clearly guaranteed and front-loaded the contract a little bit more than maybe other teams were willing to do. That's what you do when you're the chip leader. And they nailed them. They got them. I think that's a really cool thing. I think it's something to be excited about. The thing that I would caution a little bit is that I do have visions dancing in my head of both Xavier Howard and Byron Jones being locked down corners on either side, but yeah. I can't help but think this is also an insurance policy on Xavier Howard too, because Absolutely. we don't know Xavier. I doubt that Xavier's got issues with suspension with the league. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he does clearly have injury issues, and we're not sure. Dealt? Yeah, it's got to be a possibility, and I think that it's one that we should keep that in mind before because I already see on Twitter everybody, oh my God, we have the strongest lockdown secondary in the league. We have Byron Jones and Xavier Howard and Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain. Well, first off, I'm not sure I buy that because of the Eric Rowe and Bobby McCain stuff, but seriously, like keep this in mind that we could see something happen with Xavier Howard. And one of the reasons I say so, they gave Xavier that big contract last year, and right away there was a little bit of rumor and innuendo going on about Xavier behind the scenes after they traded Laramie Tunsil, and a lot of speculation on are they going to have to trade Xavier Howard now? And let's face it, that it's because we heard that he had to be talked off the ledge. And maybe that doesn't impress somebody like Brian Flores that much. I don't know. Maybe the stuff that happened during the offseason with Xavier Howard getting arrested doesn't impress some people with the Dolphins very. Just have to find out. But I would not go so far as to say to really be gung ho about these 2 as a pair yet, because there could be another shoe to drop. But this is a great signing, a great move. It's essentially the same money as Xavier Howard got. It's an upgrade on Xavier Howard, if that's what it comes down to, or it's a pair of lockdown corners. This is Brian Flores as Stephen Gilmore. That's who this is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I said it on 5 Reasons Sports. I wrote about it. Said it on this podcast. The quickest way to get relevant in this league is to be elite at something. And as of right now, if Xavier Howard is healthy, and that's an ask, and it's been an ask for at least the last 2 years, if he's healthy and Byron Jones is healthy, and I kind of like Ereck Rowe. I like what Ereck Rowe did for our team, at least in the second half of the year last year. Nick Needham came on a bit. I don't know if Bobby McCain is long for this team, but you got to say that the secondary is now a real strength on this team. And I'm looking at Xavier Howard's contract here. And it's interesting that on the out years, we're going to spend somewhere around 18% of the cap, currently on these two guys. And as of right now, we're spending 15%. So it actually goes up a little bit. But that's, based on the cap this year. So you got to think that if it dips below 15% on two guys that are elite in 2022, 2023, that we're actually, it's actually a really good deal to have both of these guys on that contract past 2022. If, of course, all is well. But, yeah, I've seen Adam Beasley talking about it today. We're spending 30% of the cap on the secondary and, 15% on these two guys. Yeah, it's big, but like I said, if you want to be relevant in this league, be good at something. And theoretically, the Dolphins are now good at one thing. They can stop the pass with their secondary. Now they got to get pass rushers. All right, and speaking of pass rushers, they signed Shaq Lawson from Buffalo, an old Marion Hobby charge. Simon, you had some thoughts. You were lukewarm on it. I'm lukewarm on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, I get what they're doing. There's clearly a plan. It's young, sort of, apart from Jones and the guy with 4 E's in his second name. They're clearly looking at those sort of arrow up-ish, young, potentially hungry guys at the end of a first contract who have started to show some form. I mean, look, Lawson and Flowers, both 25. And Shaq Lawson, Chris mentioned him kind of mid-season, really, in terms of a guy that we would potentially target, and mentioned it in the WhatsApp group and stuff. I mean, I'm just looking at it now. Miami probably going to sign Shaq Lawson, just saying. And you replying, he makes an absolute ton of sense. Can't see the date on that, but, that's kind of what we were talking about. And, he played well in that he's kind of a New England guy, 6.5 sacks. He's heavy-handed. He can really, he's a physical guy, and he's exactly the kind of guy that you'd expect us to be going after in terms of what he brings to the table, that skill set. Whether or not he can pick up and improve on that 6.5 sacks remains to be seen. But as one of you just said, Marion Hobby knows him better than anybody. He recruited him to Clemson, and we shall see what happens. But he's certainly better than any pass rusher that we've got on the roster. Certainly for the defensive end position, in terms of not counting Vince Beagle because he's a potential free agent. But this is certainly an upgrade on Charles Harris. So you would hope that he is not the final piece to the pass rushing conundrum that the Dolphins face, but it's certainly an improvement on what we have now for what doesn't seem like a huge amount of money.
Yeah, one thing. So this year he played a lot of right end, which was a little bit different from previous years with Buffalo. His efficiency was great this year. It was probably the first time that his pass rush efficiency went into the not the stratosphere, but into an area that's occupied by very good players. So obviously, arrow up. Marion Hobby has experience with him, so they must think that they can get the best out of him. The contract, I think, probably shocked a few people, but you got to keep in mind that in this free agency with this salary cap and the forward prospects for future salary caps, $10 million a year is the old $7 million a year. I mean, it's that's kind of what it is.
And there is some talk. Sorry to interrupt you, but there is some talk on Twitter that he was going back to Buffalo for 8, and Miami swooped in at 10 and took him.
Yeah, I think that this is also about weakening a division opponent. But seriously, one thing that you have to look at is his versatility, and that's the thing that I would highlight, because if you go back to Clemson, for Marion Hobby in Clemson, you watch him play. He played a lot of stand-up position. He played a lot of right outside linebacker, essentially, with the Clemson Tigers, with his hand off the ground. and yet he would be perfect and very, very suitable for Miami to play sort of a crash end position occupied by Avery Young and some other players on the Miami roster. So they can move him all over. He can play over where Vince Beagle played as a rushing right outside linebacker if you want him to, or he can play on the other side and be kind of a crash end, or he can be down there as a right defensive end on pass rushing downs, on specialty downs. I think there's a lot of versatility there, and I think that's why ultimately they've got him. Is not just that they have experience. It's not playing favorites. It's that there's a versatility with him that they're probably finding attractive.
Yeah, and we've talked about it on this podcast before. They needed some guys to do certain roles, and now they have a guy that's going to take a lot of snaps and can't play the 5 tech. He can play all along the defensive line from 3 out to 9. So, yeah, they needed that versatility, and they got a guy that's going to do it. Now, is he going to be great at it? I don't know, but he's going to play a role in this defense, and a role that was desperately needed. Could they have done better? Well, we got to wait and see. He was good last year.
Also, keep in mind who got franchised.
Yes.
Like everybody got franchised. Anybody who was anybody at that pass rush position got franchised.
Mm-hmm. And well, now we got to move on to, we've said the good. Now let's move on to the bad. Ereck Flowers, for most of his career, has just been a bad player. Now, the last 8 games last year, played him at left guard for the Washington Redskins. You could say he was actually pretty good. And, at least PFF is a big fan of his. And I've seen some of his tape, if we could call it that, and it's iffy. His numbers were all right. You could go to Washington Post, and they got offensive line stats, and his numbers were pretty good. He had 1 penalty the second half of the year, and he allowed 2 sacks all season. So, okay, he was good for 8 games, but $30 million, $10 million a year, almost $20 million guaranteed. Like, we're paying that for 8 games, Simon?
I mean, I'm not a fan of the deal, and it felt like it was a sort of, they were expecting Joe Tooney, and all of a sudden that happened. But I've seen some of his tape from the second half of the season, and it's not too bad. It's certainly better than anything we've got on the roster.
No, that's
the flip side. Sure. Well, yeah, for sure. The flip side to that, though, is that congratulations, you're better than Michael Dieter is hardly a ringing endorsement. I remain to be convinced. I don't think the Dolphins are very good at identifying offensive line men. I thought it was disappointing that Graham Glasgow was allowed to go to Detroit because I thought it was to Denver because I thought it was an infinitely better player.
And I do have some information on that. I'm told that the Dolphins never had a chance, and I don't think they even spoke to him. He was locked into Denver at 12 o'clock.
Right. Fair enough. Yeah. I mean,
I
mean, his left tackle tape frightens the hell out of me. But I don't think it's a head scratcher per se, but I don't like it. But we'll see. He's coming back to Miami. He's young. He's 25.
Yes.
He did play better. To give him his due, he did play better. Mm-hmm. And it's a remarkable story. And he's just a kid. So and he was. The knock on him as well. It's certainly I've got a good friend who's a Giants fan. I trust him on a lot of Giants things. And Kerry told me that, the knock on him for the first 2 years was that he dogged it. He was lazy. But maybe he's changed it. I know he's married. He's got kids. So maybe he's just matured a little bit. I mean, he's 25. I mean, we all did.
He's 25. He's been playing for 4 years. He was 21 years old. I mean, he's been playing for 5 years. Sorry. He was a 20-year-old.
Yeah. So, let's go. I'm prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt. And, look, if all of a sudden the starting offensive line next season is Trent Williams, Ereck Flowers, Cesar Ruiz, Jesse Davis, Lucas Niang, I'm not going to be overly disappointed. It's better than it was. So let's see how it plays out. I mean, I think a lot of chips have to fall on that offensive line. So we'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, so a couple of things. This is not the first time we've heard his name. So, yes, I have looked at what he did in the second half of the season, but really the whole season at left guard. And I wanted to see him at his worst. I wanted to see him at his best. And I was not unimpressed. You know, it was pretty good. I see what you're saying. I think that you've brought up contract year, and that's something to consider. And the fact that he had a good year all of a sudden, or a good half a year. And I think that you have to look at that as being conspicuous. But at the same time, if what I saw on tape was what he is at left guard, it's not too bad. And to be honest, I think that maybe the left tackle work was, while it was certainly not good, if you're talking about comparing his left tackle work to your top swing backup, which last year was Jamarcus Webb, it's better than that. And I think that so break in case of emergency, break glass in case of emergency left tackle. That is your starting left guard. Yeah, but Simon, we just lived through a whole year of Jamarcus Webb at left tackle, and all right. So and Ryan Fitzpatrick
pining for Julian Davenport to show his wares.
Yeah, pining for Julian Davenport, and then puking when Davenport actually made it on the field. I mean, it was bad. It was as bad as it gets. We've never seen a left tackle that bad going back to Spencer Falau. Okay, so yeah. I think that a little bit of perspective on that one, and also, you know, Ryan Fitzpatrick somehow lived through the year with those guys. And you think Tua Tagovailoa is going to live through the year with guys like that, with Jamarcus Webb and stuff like that? And one person goes down, or one rookie isn't quite ready, and then it's like, oh shit, you know. So I think that a break-in case of emergency left tackle, who is your starting left guard and played kind of well at left guard lately, it's something. And I get that the money is a little bit, like I said, this $10 million a year thing is the new $7.
Yeah.
And what they've essentially done with the guaranteed money is just say, okay, he's here for 2 years, no matter what. And you're on the hook for that. I get that, but it doesn't bother me too much. I would have liked better. I think we all would have liked to see Graham Glasgow, or certainly Joe Thuney, who got franchised just before the start of all this. Mm-hmm. So that was off the table. Andres Pete would have been a lot more expensive. He was a lot like this, though. He'd be like an emergency backup at left tackle as well. It wasn't really that good at left tackle either. So I think that it fits. It gives you some versatility. You've got somebody to replace Michael Dieter, thank God. You're moving Michael Dieter over to center, which I've said since the day he was drafted. I said that that's his position. And we'll see how it goes there, because you've released Daniel Kilgore. Mm-hmm. So you haven't got a center except Michael Dieter, really. So we'll see. You possibly upgraded 2 positions. And is that so bad?
No, it really isn't. If we get the guy that played the last 8 games, and it's strange because, and PFF, we don't know if I know that Simon has his beef with how they rate offensive linemen, and I'm not sure how the hell they rate offensive linemen either.
Yeah,
okay, but according to them, and I guess you could say that the tape kind of checks out because you can see it. He was an unmitigated disaster the first 8 games of the year, and he was actually playing at near Pro Bowl level the last 8 games of the year. And he ended up with some good numbers that, you got to say those are good numbers. You allow 2 sacks, you have 5 total penalties, and 4 of them in the first half of the year. I guess, you're doing something. You're playing good football. Okay, now, if they get the guy that played those last 8 games, yeah, this is a home run signing, because he's young enough that he could see the entire contract through, and who knows, maybe he plays like he played those last 8 games, and he might make a Pro Bowl for the Dolphins. So I guess we're just wishing and hoping with this signing. But I would have liked to seen them gone elsewhere. But as we've learned, some of these guys have their own ideas of where they want to go. And Graham Glasgow, a guy that all 3 of us, wanted, really. Like, we wanted him to be a priority. Like, he wasn't interested at all, I guess, because he was locked in on Denver at 12.
But no Andres Pete. I guess that's the question. Which
is strange to me.
Yeah.
It's strange to me because the Saints can't pay him. The Saints are trying to figure out how they're going to pay Drew Brees. and Andrus Peat's just out there, and I don't know how much is he going to cost. Is he going to cost?
But I mentioned before that the Dolphins and Saints have kind of a good relationship, right?
Yeah.
So it's not totally out of line to think that they might have talked about him, and that could cut both ways. I mean, that could be either Andrus Peat likely to sign here because Saints are singing his praises, or it could be like,
yeah, that could have been too. Yeah,
so
because I was thinking, man, does Andrus Peat make sense as a left tackle? Well, the Saints, basically wanted him as a left tackle, and the Saints chased him out of the position, went elsewhere, played him at left guard, and were, I guess, relatively happy at it. So I don't know if we wanted.
I did not like him at left tackle.
No,
I don't know if we wanted.
I don't like Ereck Flowers at left tackle either. But
no, that cannot happen. Okay,
yeah,
but I don't know if we wanted to experiment with him at left tackle. So I would say that Andrus Peat is gone as far as a target.
But why not Greg Robinson?
Has he gotten out of a Mexican clink yet, or no?
I don't think he's ever getting out of a Mexican clink, buddy.
Well, the Dolphins weren't done. One of my favorites, okay, and I gotta say my goodbyes here, okay. I've spoken with him on the field after practice. Great guy. I think he's a great player too. The only thing, he's a specialist. He only plays special teams. Doesn't contribute on defense at all, really, and that's Walt Aikens. It seems like they got his replacement, Simon.
Yeah, I think he's the first player ever in NFL history to have a touchdown with 4 E's in his second name, which is good. But I knew he was a bit of a special teams demon. I spoke to Joe Goodbury, who's if you don't follow him on Twitter, he's a good guy, big Bengals fan, and he said to me, and I said, look, I know he's kind of the Walt Aikens special teams captain, probably a bit better on defense than Aikens was, and he put that's really it. Great special teamer and an absolute nut job out there. Runs around like his head is on fire. Really, just googling him, really well respected by players. 7th round pick, I think, and has played every single game's healthy. And what's really funny, and I know it's funny, but we always used to joke about the Patriots just made such hay with kind of white receivers, white cornerbacks. Craig, if Bill Belichick if Craig James was still playing, Bill Belichick would have drafted him. Fejedelem is a white safety.
Let's just call him Clayton, okay?
Clayton's a white safety. He's an archetypal New England pickup. So it's either going to be us or the Patriots. So.
Yeah, but can I get you a little bit excited about Mr. Clayton Fejedelem, or whatever his last name is? His combine.
Clayton.
4.54 in the 40 and a half vertical jump, 20 reps. This guy's an athlete.
Yeah.
Chris, do you remember him or no?
Why wouldn't you think you'd be an athlete?
No comment.
That's racist. Jimmy Graham to the Bears, 2 years, $16 million.
Well, I mean, actually, hey, nice segue there. What about the things that didn't happen today? What about the things that we saw and other teams do? And stuff like we saw a big trade. We saw Nuke Hopkins go off somewhere else. We saw
Bill O'Brien is drunk
for David Johnson, right?
I'm a fan. I've been a fan of the NFL for 37 years. That's the worst. I genuinely think that's the worst trade I've ever seen.
Certainly.
If David Johnson is not done, he's done. Okay.
Yeah. Oh my God.
All right. So you're trading.
Really questionable.
You're trading top 2-ish, top 3-ish wide receiver in the game.
Yeah, top 2.
Or what?
But at this point, do you even blame Bill O'Brien, or do you, after seeing what happened last year with what he gave us for Laramie Tunsil, do you just blame ownership for not hiring a GM?
Yeah.
I
mean, I would.
They don't have one, right? It's still just Bill O'Brien shooting from the hip.
Yeah, it's just Bill O'Brien on his phone.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy combination. Well, let's close with this. There's still time. It's only, day one. Okay, folks. So, don't get too excited. Don't get too down. There's still time. What would you like to see going forward, Simon, like in the next, let's say, the next 2 or 3 days?
I'd like to see a trade for Trent Williams.
Mm-hmm.
I think that makes me feel significantly better moving forwards. I think that's where the Dolphins.
How far are you willing to go?
I think probably the third round pick, and I might be potentially throw something in next year, potentially. Mm-hmm. He's been out of the game for 18 months, and whenever you tweet about it, people are like, he's 32. He's the. Come on, let's be realistic. He's been out of the game.
Jason Peters was all pro at 37. Okay.
I know. I mean, exactly. I just don't buy that. He's over the hill, or people making out like he's 70 or something. It's just astonishing. He's the top 2 or 3. David Bakhtiari, him. I mean, that's it. And then there's Tunsil and Ronnie Stanley, and the Dallas left tackle who's not been particularly healthy for the last 18 months, but Tyron Smith's right up there. But Trent Williams, when he's healthy, is as good as it is, and he played right tackle at Oklahoma because Phil Lodeholt played left tackle, and the chances are we're going to be drafting a left-handed quarterback, so you can play him wherever you bloody well want to. Frankly, that to me just makes an awful lot of sense, and already then you're beginning to shore up that offensive line. Are they done in the secondary? Because if not, Logan Ryan would make a lot of sense. Depends what they're going to do with the nickel. But I think from what felt like a sort of our come on start earlier on, the last few hours, it's really it's evened out quite nicely.
Yeah, I think Byron Jones to the rescue, really. And that's a hell of a rescue, though. So I think that's a really good start. Questions that I have. I mean, if you look at the ages of some of the guys that you're talking about, be it Ereck Flowers being still only 25 years old, and Shaq Lawson only being 25 years old as well. Byron Jones being, his early 27 years old. Does that kind of give us an indication, though, of what's happening and what's still happening? Because it was the same thing last year. And therefore, I know that we're pining a little bit for Trent Williams, and we'd all like to see it happen. Mm-hmm. But does it just seem like it's not destined to be? I mean, they're clearly going after these early 20-somethings. And maybe that really doesn't fit. I know it would. Everybody's worried about Tua's health, right? And we're still stuck on Tua, of course. Mm-hmm. Everybody's worried about his health, thinking that he's acting like he's going to break in the first game that he plays. Well, certainly one way to help him be healthy is having a guy like Trent Williams protecting him. So I get having him early. I get having him for 3, 4, 5 years. Who knows? Paying him the money because he's worth it. I get all of that, but maybe that sort of logic just doesn't play for the Dolphins purely because of his age, and they might be showing that in their pattern already, just as they have all last year. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to get your hopes up a little bit. I would like to see something done at the running back position, because I would like to free that position up for. Listen, we talked about Byron Jones and Xavier Howard, and if those two are the pair, that's great. But I don't feel great about the safety position. I think that Eric Rowe was all right, but he's not a typical strong safety as far as being able to be a factor in the run game and be a very strong player. I think that he's sort of a matchup guy, and a matchup at the tight end position and in pass protection, or not protection, pass defense. And then, of course, you've got Bobby McCain, a free safety. And I just think it wasn't an unmitigated disaster, but in a way it kind of was, because he was destined to get hurt, and that's what he did. He got hurt. And also he wasn't very good before he got hurt. So you still need help there, and I'd like to free up that second round pick for. I know we all love Ashton Davis, right? Or Antoine Winfield. Wouldn't you love to free up one of those picks for Ashton Davis or Antoine Winfield rather than J.K. Dobbins or somebody like Cam Akers, something? get something done at the running back position. Whether it could be a trade, it could be Melvin Gordon. I don't care. Get something done now so that you free that up, and then you can take care of that safety spot.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with everything that both of you said. And I would go a twofer. I would trade for Trent Williams, and I'd go after Melvin Gordon because I've said it before. And speaking of things that we wanted to see happen, we've mentioned this guy's name 5,000 times on this podcast. I wrote about him. Everybody here has written about him. Kyle Van Noy is now a Miami Dolphin. Simon, this day keeps getting better.
Yeah, 4 years, $51 million. That's big time spending for the Dolphins. But, he is a pretty perfect scheme fit. He goes back to play under the coach that he knows so well in Brian Flores. I mean, he was used more extensively as a pass rusher last season than I think at any other point during his career. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, was in Detroit to begin with, but he's just yet another movable piece who knows the scheme. He is that kind of true hybrid linebacker who can, rush the passer, who can cover, really good pass rushing skills. And I suppose you'd say a completely coveted skill set for somebody that wants to play that Brian Flores defense. I think I looked at his stats when I wrote that thing for the website yesterday. I think he had 60 pressures, 8 sacks, and 45 hurries, I'm going to say, last season, which is pretty decent in anybody's book. So all of a sudden now, Shaq Lawson, Kyle Van Noy, and that potentially takes Caleb Chase on out of the running. That removes another possibility in that, with one of those early picks in terms of the draft. All of a sudden you think, okay, that's, there's left and right potentially with Beagle, maybe take Zach Bourne out of the running as well. There's interesting move.
Well, one thing we've talked about all this time, who are they going to get as an edge player, I guess, and who fits them? Like, what's their style? We talked about Jadeveon Clowney last year, of course, and we know that the Dolphins were on the verge of trying to get him. But what he's good at? What is he good at? He's a specimen, but he's good at defending the run. He's an all-around player. He's versatile. Jadeveon Clowney was speaking. He's not a pass rusher. I mean, we look at we talked about Yannick Ngakoue. He is a good player, and he is a unique pass rusher. He's got speed around on the edge. That's not their style. Like he got franchise tagged anyway, but that's not their style. Their style is somebody who's a good all-around player, and that's what Kyle Van Noy is. He's good against the run. He does damage as a pass rusher, more than Vince Beagle does. And he can be used. I mean, the more jobs you can do, the better for this style of defense, because this is they try to be a positionless defense. We just talked about. It's funny because during the break, I started looking. I haven't been paying attention to anything all day because the market is literally just imploding. And that's my job. So I just went ahead and looked. I was going to bring up, I was like, despite signing Shaq Lawson, I would look out for Kyle Van Noy anyway. And so I started doing the Twitter search, and I was like, oh, it looks like the Jets are going to get him. and then like literally within 30 seconds, I was like, oh, we signed him. So it makes a lot of sense opposite Shaq Lawson, because as I said before, Shaq Lawson has versatility. He can play a couple of different positions, and so can Kyle Van Noy. And now you've got the versatility with, say if Jerome Baker sticks on, he's got versatility in that defense. And you've got a kind of a straight Mike linebacker and Raekwon McMillan. I think that this all fits together really well. The odd man out is, we talked about Javon Hargrave being a potentially attractive target, and maybe somebody the Dolphins would be interested in. He just signed with the Eagles for 3 years, $39 million. They had to get somebody. I mean, we stole Byron Jones from them, so they're not going to get the Dolphins aren't going to get Javon Hargrave. But that doesn't bother me as much. I think they're remaking this defense in Brian Flores' image, clearly with the versatility of Kyle Van Noy and Shaq Lawson, but also with the man coverage skills, the press man coverage skills of Byron Jones. Yes. So it's a defense that's being remade in Brian Flores' image for him to sort of take over and make into what he's always wanted it to be, and couldn't, obviously, because he had a bunch of guys off the street last year.
Yeah.
30 million guaranteed for Kyle Van Noy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're close, aren't they? I mean, Brian Flores, Kyle Van Noy. This is why one of the reasons
we talked about this. We talked about this before. There were, those two are barbecues and ball games.
Yeah, exactly.
We
sleep over his house.
Yeah. One of the first episodes that we did talking about the off season, I think I asked the question and both of you agreed. Like, isn't it just as easy as Brian Flores and Kyle Van Noy are like really good friends? They're actual friends, and that it could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, it did happen. And it's the friends and family program, but this is a guy that can play football.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
right.
And I guess you could just put the C on his chest. He's the new captain on the defense.
Absolutely.
Yes, I would say so. So yeah, what a day! What a day!
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost afraid to end the podcast, but we will, because who knows what might be coming down the pike in the next 4 or 5 minutes.
Trent Williams probably something like that.
Probably Trent Williams and Melvin
that
Gordon.
would be the day.
Who knows?
I will say this: Kyle Van Noy bucks the trend a little bit. He's 29. He's almost 30. He's going to turn 30 in June.
Yeah, but I will leave you with this. There are tweets out there right now in Twitterland that had the Jets in on Tooney, Shaq Lawson, Byron Jones, and now Kyle Van Noy.
Right, and Conklin as well. Hasn't Conklin gone to the Browns?
Yes, and Conklin too. That's 5 guys that Gase swung on. And
nobody wants to play for Adam Gase.
Nobody. That's 5. Like, that's epic. I've never seen that before in my life. How do you miss on 5 guys?
Ooh,
but they did.
That's tough.
Yeah. Well, we don't want to end the podcast, but we must, because who knows what's coming down the pike in the next 2 or 3 days.
We'll probably have to circle back and just add an addendum to the podcast.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, who knows? Maybe they pull off something bigger than what they've already done, and we'll do an emergency podcast. But for now, that's it. There is no more. You will hear from us as you need us. If not, you will hear from us next week.
Thanks for listening to 3 Yards Per Carry. You can subscribe via iTunes, on Podbean, or your usual podcast provider.